Welcome to the explanation for step 4, our final copy of the research paper. So far, you have completed your research, turned the research into a graphic organizer, and you've written your first copy of the research paper, and it's typed in Cami, which I'll show you in just a moment. Step 4 is creating our final copy of our research paper. Since it's already typed, you will not have to retype it. But you may need to reread your first draft several times and look at it from many different angles. We want to check for capitals at the beginnings of your sentences. So you might reread just looking for the capitals. We might look for periods at the end of the sentences. Again, you might totally reread it looking for the periods. And then you're looking for complete sentences and correct spelling. And on this page, I have an editing checklist and I have links to your research paper. Now, one thing I want to mention, I want to backtrack to step 3. One of the things that I didn't tell you that we need to complete for step 3 of your graphic organizer, and I'll show you down at the bottom here. It says, one thing I forgot to mention, after you write your first draft of the research paper, add your sources to the last page of the document. Any good research paper or PowerPoint lists the sources where they got the information from. So I will show you right now. So I gave you a link to this graphic organizer. If you remember, on this graphic organizer, you recorded all of your sources. So this would just be a matter of copying and then pasting it. Now here is our endangered animal research paper, and you wrote it and you wrote it and you wrote it. I gave you a couple pages. You will see that there is a sources page, and I would just paste it there, although that did not work. So let me go back and give that a try again so you can see what it would look like. All right, perfect. And so I'm highlighting it. Control C is copy, go into the paper, and Control V is paste. It worked. However, I don't want it to be centered. I want it to be left aligned. And then you do a return or enter, and then add all of your sources. There might be quite a few. Now, if you get done copying and pasting these and the fonts don't match, all you have to do is highlight the font and then make sure it's all Times New Roman and make sure it's all 12-point font. And then you have that there. All right, so that's all you would need to do there. So first thing that I'd like you to do for step 4 is make sure your sources are all set. Okay, the next step is you will also find that there is an editing checklist on step 4. So if we go to step 4, you will see editing checklist. That looks like this. And you'll also want to bring up a copy of your paper so that you can look at it through the editing checklist. So the first question when you are proofreading is, did I use appropriate verb tenses and stay consistent throughout? That means, does your subject match your verb? When you have a plural pronoun or plural subject, did you use the correct verb? So you're reading through to double check for subject verb agreement. And we just have this, you can do like a little checklist. Now where it says peer editor's initials, you can ask a friend after you have done this to review your research article if they are done with theirs. If they're to the same point, you can ask them to take a little break and see if they would read yours and do a checklist. Did I correctly use conjunctions like and, but, or, so, yet, and correlative conjunctions, either or, neither nor, not only but, both and interjections? Did I correctly use prepositions? You can read more about that. Now, editing, this is the most important thing, is the editing of punctuation. Does each sentence end with a period, question mark, or exclamation point? Did I use commas correctly? Now they give you some hints for when you use commas. Separate items in a series, separate an introductory element, set off words yes and no, Set off a tag question like, it's you, isn't it? Separate words of direct address and before coordinating conjunctions in a compound sentence. Number 6, did I underline or use quotation marks or italics to indicate titles of works? 7, did I use quotation marks to correctly show speaking parts or dialogue? In our case, it would be quotation marks around if you directly quoted the internet, some of your research. Capitalization, does each sentence start with a capital letter? Did I capitalize all proper nouns? And then editing, spelling. Did I use a dictionary or other resources to check my spelling and make corrections? I would like you to use an online dictionary like Webster's to correct your spelling. A lot of times there'll be a zigzaggy line that goes underneath when either something is misspelled or something does not make sense. So take your time with this. This editing is very, very important. A lot of times I whisper read my rough copy because then my brain does not skip over some of the mistakes. Sometimes when I just read something in my head, my brain just skips over it. So if you whisper read it, that can be a helpful hint. And obviously when you're done, you can ask somebody who is willing to maybe find some more errors for you. Now, another thing that I've included is the rubric of how a good piece of writing gets scored. 6 being the best, 1 being not the best. So you're scored on ideas and content. And so they're looking for several sources that you're using in order to form your research paper, that your topic is stated clearly with good details. Information was gathered, summarized, or paraphrased in the finished work, meaning you didn't use their exact words, you kind of made it your own. You have good formatting, illustrations, and multimedia. A list of sources is provided, which we had you add, and the writer has an understanding of how an author uses reasons and evidence to support a point, and the piece was revised. Under organization, is your information organized in paragraphs? Did you use transition words? Do you have concluding statements? And was the piece planned out? And if you use the graphic organizer, it probably was very well planned out. Next is voice. Do you create a clear mental picture for the reader? Do you hold the reader's attention? And do you have a task, purpose, and audience in mind when you are writing it? Again, if you use the graphic organizer, you probably do. Word choice. They're looking for precise language and specific vocabulary for your animal. So for instance, if your animal is a hunter, you might choose to use the word predator to show that you can use those great vocabulary words. And they want you to be very specific in your word usage. Sentence fluency. Do you have a combination of short sentences and longer sentences and sentences that are combined together? Does your writing sound natural? Conventions is your capitalization, punctuation, spelling, and grammar. Grade appropriate words are spelled correctly, and you use that online dictionary to help you check spelling. And then presentation. The piece was edited and technology was used to publish writing, and which we definitely do. So also look at the rubric when you're trying to form your final copy. So that is step 4. So be sure to use your editing checklist and your research paper, obviously, to do that. And also don't forget to go back and add those sources to your research paper so that you can have people know that you used experts to form your research. This is not just your opinion. All right, happy working.